What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? Welcome to another episode of the African American Folklorist of the Month. As you know, monthly we hope to and try to raise up cultural, traditional, educational artists, community workers and scholars, everyone who is working to liberate, decolonize, disrupt, and uplift of the Black story, the Black people, the blues people, right? In this particular episode, Clarksdale, Mississippi is known around the world as the home of the blues, a place where sound, soil, memory, labor, and Black cultural expression meet at the crossroad. But beyond the mythology often attached to the blues, Clarksdale also is a breathing Black community shaped by creativity, struggle, resistance, and renewal. So, for this African American Folklorist of the Month, we sit down and celebrate Chandra Williams, artist, educator, community healer, and executive director of Crossroads Cultural Arts Center in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Williams' work centers transformation, not as an abstract idea, but as a process communities can practice through art, cultural memory, and collective action. Through her leadership, Crossroads Cultural Arts Center honors the blues as one of the many African cultural practices that continue to live, breathe, and heal in the Mississippi. In a region too often marked by inequity, poverty, extraction, and cultural appropriation, the center creates space for Black people and local communities to reclaim cultural identity, restore narrative power, and use art as a tool for healing. Williams brings decades of experience as a teaching artist, organizer, museum educator, private art school founder, and community educator. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Art in printmaking and drawing from Washington University in St. Louis, with concentrations in critical theory and community education. She is also the creator of Follow the Edge, a drawing method that uses observational practice to activate awareness, deepen perception, and support learning across fields, including autism training and diversity education. In this conversation, we explore art as cultural practice, the blues as community memory, the role of creative spaces in Black healing, and what it means to build change from within the community rather than waiting on institutions to define, approve, or rescue us. More importantly, we get to find out who our sister Chandra Williams is. Welcome to the show, good sister.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. That was so beautiful introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. So first, I want to talk about where you are. That's the beautiful background.
Okay. um, it, I'm just so excited to be sitting with you and in the company of all the people that you work with. We are in Crossroads Cultural Arts Center, our small nonprofit here in Clarksdale, Mississippi. You're seeing the majority of the main room right now. There's a stage to my right and some other small pieces, but this is where we gather with the community. We are on Delta Avenue in downtown Clarksdale, a street where many people from all over the world walk in this little town, largely because Ground Zero Blues Club is here, so people hear about that. And we're lucky to be in this good location as well because we get visitors as well from all over the world as well as our local community. So this is Crossroads Cultural Arts Center.
Mm. It's ironic that the name of your organization has the term crossroads in it, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, well, let me rephrase this. There are a large percentage of fans.
Hmm.
They equate crossroads to the blues,
Hmm.
but your description actually broadens and widens what crossroads actually really means, right? You want to talk about that?
Sure, sure. Yeah, definitely. Crossroads. I mean, for people who may not know or be familiar with the blues aspect of it, to kind of give a context about the contrast of between how I see it and how it's widely seen with the blues. Uh, um, Robert Johnson, who was a great blues musician, died at a young age in his 30s, was from this area, very talented. And there's this legend. I don't really subscribe to that legend. And being here in Clarksdale, most of the local people don't either,
Hmm.
particularly the Black people. I don't think I've ever heard one Black person in Clarksdale say, repeat this legend themselves. But the legend is that Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to be able to play music. And it's so widely spread that it's just all over the world. And it's also an example of how our culture, unintentionally or intentionally, gets our cultural assets get appropriated and sort of distorted to serve a narrative that, you know, someone else has. Um, but the crossroads in that legend is the crossing of Highway 61 that comes down from Memphis and goes through the Mississippi Delta, and Highway 49. Um, this organization was named this before I was hired. I'm the first director, and I've been here since the beginning. But the some community members and people got together and they named it, and it was smart because the name is widely recognized. The word is widely recognized. But for me, the meaning of the crossroads is the intersection between the people and the people and culture, the African peoples and culture who came from, from the east to the west, as you might say, or who were brought, and the American landscape and culture. And that crossroads impacted us as well as America and the world. We have impacted America and the world. And then the various ways in which that intersection, because of the nature of that intersection, which was a harmful nature
Right.
in terms of the transatlantic slave trade, um, that harmful nature of that intersection impacted our experience of our own self, of our culture, of our cultural identity. Um, I really like to say at that crossroads, another identity was imposed upon us. And that is the identity of a cheap labor force, a free labor force, enslaved people. And along with that economic function, um, fundamental to that was also the manipulation of our image through stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
uh, caricatures. And I think sometimes we look at that as if it's just a side note or a symptom, but working in the cultural arts, and looking at the function of culture, those images were just as important as the chains that
Mm-hmm.
held us in making slavery a success,
Wow.
in successfully enslaving us, because it's just as important as the ships that went and got us. This would not have worked without those images that were created of us, because as human beings, the nature of any human being is to not wish harm or to see. We get disturbed if I see somebody get hurt, even if I don't know them, just it's in the human nature to be bothered by that. So there had to be a way to excuse this behavior in the minds of the public, even the white public, the majority, just regular people, or else any normal human being would be up in arms and not allow this to go on, near them. Any healthy human being, I should say. But what those images like Sambo, Mammy, Coon, the happy slave, what they did was they created an association in the minds of the public between our Black bodies and what we really are, an association between our likeness and savagery, ignorance, undeservedness, being happy to be enslaved. And it's not much different than the association created when Allah said that we were less than human.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things were used to tell the other people, it's okay, it's okay. That's what they're for. And that still impacts us deeply to today. But one thing I would like to say that's very important, hopeful, and powerful is that there's a major difference which really empowers us right now and gives us optimism compared to at that time. I mean, of course, we're not in chains and things, although we know that slavery was moved by the 13th Amendment into the prisons, which said, interestingly, well, I'm not going to say who said it, but a relatively high profile, but no one will know who this is by me saying this, attorney, white man, was the first person who ever really quoted to me or paraphrased what's actually in the 13th Amendment. And it was just, it had nothing to do with revolution or anything. He was just talking, really, he was talking about employment law.
Mm.
And he was explaining in this training of management about what employment law is, why it exists. And so in talking about employment law, workforce, he brought the 13th Amendment, and he told us the 13th Amendment says that in the United States, there will not be slavery unless, a person, it will not be allowed to be enslaved unless they have committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or unless they have been convicted of a crime. And that unless is what we have to understand. And now in 2026, this is still the law. Okay, so I know that you likely know this, but it's important to the conversation. Now back to I digressed from something.
No, you dropping gems.
Oh, the images. Okay, so in the power shift that has happened, that I don't feel that we as a community have necessarily embraced, and I want to encourage us to. This really happened more than 30 years ago, or more than that. But the power shift in those images that are used to create associations and impose identities on us that serve this economic system, which chooses to place us in the place at the foundation or bottom where the cheap labor is, because that's the foundation of our profit-driven economy, can't exist without cheap labor. Okay, so just like if you have a paper factory, you need trees to make paper. You never want to run out of trees.
Mm-hmm.
You need constant source of trees. So or if you have a furniture company, you need constant source of wood. So when you have this system that depends on cheap labor, you want to keep a constant source of cheap labor. And that's going to be people who are, for whatever reason, unable to move up that economic ladder. Maybe it's destitution, maybe it's lack of opportunity, maybe it's this or that. So there are many reasons why things that we know are unhealthy continue, because they feed into that cheap labor system. But back to the image and this shift in power. At that time with those caricatures, those were illustrated by other people of us. someone else creating a piece of art, a representation of us that was degrading. When you even go into beyond just the still art into the theater, our image in the early theater was blackface worn by other people who wanted to represent us in the way they wanted to represent us. We didn't do it, one, because we wouldn't have represented ourselves that way. At that time, we still knew who we were enough to say we have dignity, and we still have dignity.
Right, right.
But so, but also because they wouldn't allow us in. Okay, and then we get forward with the Bert, is it Bert Williams? I might be saying the wrong last
Oh,
name
you're
right
talking
now.
about the Jim Crow cat?
The guy one of the early black
Yeah.
men who went into the theater. So as soon as we were allowed into their theatrical spaces, we were required to paint our faces. Our regular blackness wasn't enough. We had to be it had to be stereotyped, and then we had to behave in the way that they wanted to portray us. So all of this is someone else orchestrating the image of blackness. As time went on and we became more and more involved in the theater and the arts, and technology developed, television, media, and all this, and civil rights came, end of desegregation. So now we're getting into these spaces of music and film. But I can't skip over our sort of first big Hollywood national release that was released in the White House, or played in the White House, Birth of a Nation.
Right.
And this is crucial because it helps us understand the role that arts play in our economy. Not just for Black people, but for everybody. The role that arts play in our socio-economic structure. And I'm not talking about selling and buying and how much music, how much money, how many CDs we sold. I'm talking about the function of art in maintaining our socio-economic structure. And that's not something that we talk about commonly, but for Black people, it's crucial that we become clear, we get a clear and common understanding of the role of arts in maintaining social structure, because we are the primary people upon which that role has been enacted. No, it's been enacted upon everybody, but in the most heinous way against us. Okay. And when we didn't know that, when we had the opportunity to become a part of it, we allowed ourselves to become a part of all of that. The whole, even the degradation of ourselves.
Right.
Okay. But the shift in power that I want to point at is when it went from other people's bodies representing us to our bodies representing ourselves. Because we can't control what other people do. We can try to influence it, this and that and other, but we can control what we do with our bodies, our voices, our movement, and how we present ourselves, most importantly to ourselves first and foremost, to our children. Because outside of the social function of art, in nature, in the nature of humanity, human life, art, the art of a culture represents the identity of the culture. To the culture itself, or to the community itself, and to others. So when our children hear our songs, they say, oh, this is who I am. They see that as a reflection of what they are to become. That is the natural process that happens with the physiological, mental functions of art, which is perceived by our senses, by our eyes and our ears. And it creates associations in our mind by which we then act. So if a young Black boy sees his image, an image that looks like him over and over again, associated with violence or something healthy, whichever one he sees more of, he's going to feel inspired that that's who he's supposed to be. He doesn't have to make that choice, and many people don't. But that's what's happening internally in the mind. So we have to be aware so that we can make these choices, particularly because we live in a society who, again, has so heinously used this function, this natural function of art within our social economic structure to remove us from who we really are so that we'll serve the purpose, others desire. And I want to point out too, I'm not taking anything from racism by saying this, but what I think we need to sometimes look at and understand is this is not happening because white people hate us or somebody hates us, not even because the government hates us or just really believes that we're so bad. This is happening because we were relegated to an economic function that they're not willing to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm saying the entire economy rests on the presence of a labor force, and if they've already gone so far as to hundreds of years ago, going across the ocean and getting us and doing all of this slavery, sharecropping, and creating an association in the world's mind that this is the level of our life. So even though we're out of that form, we're still in this form of capitalism that requires this labor force. And if they put so much investment into placing us in that position in our minds and in other minds, it just makes sense economically to continue to relegate us to this, despite the destruction that it causes in our lives. But the power shift, now that we come to where we're the ones who are acting, singing, dancing, and creating the image of ourselves. But the most pivotal place where I think where we can see that this power shift happened, but we have not yet, although we can today, grasped this power and use it towards our own desires, not the desires of others. The strongest for me historical and still contemporary example is the evolution or the movement of rap music, rhythmic rhyming, from the community into this industry, into the mainstream industry, particularly the part of the late 80s and early 90s. It had already come in, but this is when something important happened. But when the music went from the community, where we had the agency, it had a certain content, which was primarily positive, primarily community oriented, maybe having fun, dancing, partying, telling stories, and passing wisdom. And that's not to say there was never anything bad told, because it told what was going on. So bad things happen. But when it got into the industry, this mainstream music industry is part of this socioeconomic machine. And that socioeconomic machine already had an agenda for us. So when we take our cultural art form, and understandably so, we want to enter into this industry so that we can gain economically from our art form. But we're not realizing that as we enter into that, we're having to accept their agenda. And there's a particular way where that happens, where we can, not just Black people, any human being can accept an agenda without being aware of it. And can even carry that agenda out fully without even being aware that this is what we're participating in. Okay. Especially when we live in a society where art is primarily considered entertainment. Because although art does entertain, again, going back sort of to the nature or the function of arts and cultural arts in human history, there are many functions very important and much more deep and impactful than just the entertainment.
Right.
Art shapes reality. And I can speak back about that in a very practical way, later. But so we take this art form, leaves our community where we have it and we have the agency and it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is to pass on our culture to the next generation and bring them into the fold of who we are and how we believe and what we do. Now we've taken this thing that talks about who we are and what we believe and how we do, and we went to the record label and knocked on the door. You guys like this, don't you? We'd like to come in and do this art form here. Well, you come to a time in the early 90s when that record label and this opens the door and says, well, that sounds good, but the people wanted more street. And I know because I'm the record executive. I'm the authority on what the people want. It sounds like it makes sense. Okay, they're telling me what to do to get in and make it. They're opening the door for me. All I have to do is kind of shift what I was talking about. I used to get really upset about this. I mean, all the way when I was younger. But my sister, who would have to listen to me go on and on about it, my twin sister, she told me something really wise. I mean, we were just maybe in college. She said, well, you don't need to get so upset. I was often getting upset about the artists themselves. She said, you obsess about this stuff and you study this and you study that, you're kind of like a sociologist or something like that. But that's not what everybody does. Everybody's not into that. Everybody's not thinking about those things. Some people, like our peers who maybe were getting into the rap field, they're thinking about how passionate they are about rapping and how the money they can make to help out their situation and their family.
Right.
Things, which I knew as well. Right. So I said that. I said, yeah, that's right. She said, so when they go in there and they have an opportunity and there's this lump sum of money on the table for a couple of recordings, it's unrealistic to expect that person to sit there and do a sociological and economic analysis of the impact of the words that are going to come out of their mouth it would be great, but that's not realistic. So don't be upset about these people because they didn't think through it that way.
I have to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I was just going to let you go. Which
I was going, wasn't I?
But it's okay because you were dropping so many gems. I don't know if you saw me taking notes to come back to revisit some things. But it's the last thing you said that I was like, okay, no, we have to talk about this in the moment.
Okay, yes.
I was told as a young man, you need to start by a signed rapper who's a good friend and helped me and my brother tremendously. You got to start writing some more street shit, yo. And so there's a lot of things here. One, the idea that when you're in a situation where everybody, you got to feed people.
Yes.
Which is what you just described, right?
Right.
But there's another part of that I think goes back to what I could surmise to or paraphrase to be what your entire thesis was and everything you just said, which was pretty much we have I call it the prison planet. They obstructed and pretty much disrupted our ordained stewardship with our planet. And to your point, which I 1,000,000,000% agree with, we are just the cotton and the cotton pickers. It's one or the other, right? Meaning we are the free labor.
In this socioeconomic structure. Yeah, yes. Right. Not in nature or not in existence.
No, not in nature.
Correct.
No, not in nature. In the prison planet.
That's right.
The empire's disruption.
Exactly.
Right. So now with what you just brought up, what I'm thinking about is how you broke down the multiple eras in a very practical way of how this has happened. So my question to you is, even though we both agreed, you have some brothers and sisters that's like, yo, I gotta feed my family, so I gotta do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that thought less about the passion and love and more about what you said earlier, being indoctrinated so much that you don't even realize that you are feeding and perpetuating the system?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. I want to say yes and no. But really, the answer is yes. But I want to say yes and no because there's two sides that, and it's very important. And it speaks back to what I said about this power shift that we haven't realized, but we live in it every day. It's like we got the power faucet on, just running. We don't get a cup and drink out of it. We don't put our hands under it and wash it. We allow it to roll into the dirt and turn into the mud that we, wallow in with our power.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, you said, is that more about the indoctrination? And It is, but I want to be careful when I say that, because what I'm acknowledging as well is that, of course, these things happen without our knowledge, and without our awareness. We don't have to be aware, and most often we aren't aware, and indoctrination happens best without awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when that young man or young woman goes into the studio and does this rap for money that degrades the community, it's definitely an indoctrination, one that we have also participated in creating for our own youth unknowingly when we joined into it. And I'll say why I'm saying that, but it's the same indoctrination we could also call. I don't know your friend, and so of course it's not anything personal to the friend you said y'all need to make more street raps. That's also an aspect of the indoctrination. Okay. So the thing I want to bring to the surface is not that the answer is no, it's yes, but this I want to center, which I try to center, and this comes from my work in drawing as well, observational drawing, center the principle of non-judgment. Okay. And I'm just saying this broadly, but in particular, when it comes to our this indoctrination that's happened with our music to our whole community, and then the indoctrination we've participated in that has led to what's going on right now today, in debates, in rap and stuff, in music. And non-judgment is so important because this is something that a system was doing to us. And one of the major things that was on the agenda, that is on that agenda, is to separate us. Of course, to divide and conquer, but in particular to create one of the most devastating severings that any human community can experience, and that is severing the relationship between the elders and the youth.
Right.
Okay. And what has happened with rap when it went into the industry and came back out louder than what we had been able to do. But now I'm gonna quote one of your guests, because I loved it, Dr. Atkinson.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. He said he referred to a poisonous assignment given particularly to Black men.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that assignment is an identity. You're this, you're that. Something that's very unhealthy and destructive. Because we're in this system where we've all been given a poisonous assignment. And that poisonous assignment divided our elders and our youth. A wise elder from Burkina Faso, Sabon Fusome, she's passed now, but she told me, she said, if there's one thing that African American people need to do that's more important than anything else. She said, because if you don't do this one thing, no matter what you do, It can be right, it can be perfect, you can do everything right. But if you don't do this one thing, nothing will last. And that is to reconnect the elders and the youth and to institutionalize within the community the bond between elders and youth. Because when they are not connected, there's a hole in the bottom and everything falls through. And that's what's happening right now. We make progress, it falls through, or a issue comes up and it falls through this hole between the elders and the youth. If I may be specific about what's going on, like the music right now, this conversation between Young Miami and NDRE, you know, when we look at this from a lens of non-judgment about what's happening within this structure, and the fact that we have an elder on one hand, you know, she's not 80, but NDRE, and the youth on the young adults. I mean,
she's an auntie, right? That's what they call us now.
That's what they call them, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I have to live on this edge of where I'm aware of what our current, you know, pop stuff is, but I also have to be aware of something else because I can't allow myself to be consumed by it. I love our culture now, but I'm talking about pop media.
Right.
Yeah, so I have friends who keep me informed. As a matter of fact, a friend texted me, check out this song and this debate going on, because she knows I'm not gonna, you know, they let me know when I need to, you know, really tune in more than I have been. But so what's happening, you know, when we look at it in non-judgment, you got the elder and the youth who aren't able to communicate with one another in a way where they understand each other. Because I heard I understand NDRE's feeling about the song, and that's something else. But I understand the young lady who participated in everything we just described about people going into the media, in the music industry, and being encouraged to basically create a criminal image of us. So of course she experienced that. And if she chose to do it, just like my sister said, she might not have been thinking about the sociological impact of this, that, and the other, whereas NDRE is over here thinking about the vibrational impact of music, which is a real thing. But we are not born just being able to talk about that. She knows that because of experiences that she's had and who she is. Now, she might have been born with that gift, you know, but to be able to articulate that takes a certain type of education and experience, and we all have different ones. So, but they need each other's information, because one thing the young Miami said, or I don't know if she said this because it gets convoluted, you know, all the tweets and the this.
Right.
So in case she didn't say this, but someone who was supporting her said something like, and this is so profound, even though it might sound kind of wild and crazy, but when you really listen to it, it's just, this person was just observing the reality that they've lived in at this age. They were up in arms because why would you be so mad about a song that's about stealing when all this other music has been about, in their understanding, which makes a lot of sense, something worse, killing. They said people have been making songs, so many successful rap songs about killing people, but we shouldn't use that as a starting ground. But that speaks to what these young people have experienced. I mean, they were born into this world where rap was already associated with crime.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry. Let me stop going.
No. You're on point, and this is what this is about. I do want to get into you and your story, but I have to say, what's missing in a majority of these dialogues is even before we go back to the blues, we could just start with hip hop. Hip hop in New York City, where it was born, started out of a gang culture. So it comes out of the mud. It comes out of extreme poverty, actually. And when I say started, we know that the music 5 years prior 10 years prior and so forth was doing a lot of the same thing. But when it becomes what we know of hip hop, when people started intentionally bringing these different art forms together that you and I both can trace back, this was an effort to uh man, if anybody, it to me it correlates to your work. It was an effort to heal Black and brown folk
Exactly.
from
Exactly.
gang violence, police violence,
Right.
extreme poverty, and this was happening during the Bronx was burning, when New York was on fire. So I say
You're
this
right.
to say it always came out the streets.
Yes.
However, it was a what's the word I'm looking for? Intentional shift, as you stated earlier, to try to tap into that power source you're talking
Right.
about.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's such an important point, and so many important things within that. Let's just start with it coming from the street, and let's just say, for instance, it's always had a hardcore element. And what hardcore might mean doesn't, today we think hardcore automatically means killing,
Right.
but you can be hardcore about your family. I
Correct.
don't play about my children. Okay. Or you can be hardcore about your business. You can be hardcore about your purpose. You can be hardcore about protecting your community from these entities that are coming in trying to hurt us.
Correct.
Just as you described, and the whole what really happened with NWA, that they didn't start off as a gangster rap in the way that we conceive of that. They were really protesting as well, police violence and things like this, that we endured in our lifetimes, that, very commonly in my childhood, in teenage years, every day in Kansas City, police were beating up Black boys for no reason. Okay. I'm gonna be real and vulnerable. I've always been a bit, people might think, oh, it's that boy or a girl, and in the 90s, I'm wearing my baggy clothes and I had locks, I was an artist. So, I had my bag, I didn't sag my pants down to my knees or anything, but, loose clothes. And I'm in
I did.
Kansas City. I was in Kansas City at this time, maybe 16, 17. And again, every night on the news, they would show kids getting killed, police beating up. It was very bad at that time. So I'm waiting on a bus stop, this public bus, looking towards the bus, the direction the bus is going to come from, just there. And all of a sudden I feel a breeze by my ear, like this. And I turned, and when I turned, a nightstick, the police stick, was swinging. I mean,
Wow.
I just was like, I see it's a white man. He's swinging this. I see behind him the patrol car with his partner in there, both doors open. They had just like swooped up, pulled over, and he had jumped out. There's a glass bus shelter behind me. I'm not standing in it. I'm standing outside of it. It's right behind me. So I'm looking at him. I'm seeing all this in a split second and watching this thing drop. When I turned to him and he saw me, I could tell in his eyes that he realized I was a girl. Because I've seen that look before, just being such as myself, it's life, whatever. So the moment that he had this realization, he dropped the stick to his side and just started like casually swinging it. And he looked, he said, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. And then he paused. He looked past me into the glass shelter. And he said, I was just coming to check this shelter out to see if anybody left any junk over here. And he went like this around me. Nope, looks good. Hopped back in the car, rolled off.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. In my mind at that age, I said, wow, had he not missed me, they would have killed me. because those associations that have been made at that time, there was an association between Black males and crime and violence that allowed or excused in some people's minds this abuse of Black boys. Okay. And for me at 16 to know that had they hit me first and then realized I was a girl, they would have threw me in a lake or a river. Because at that time, the idea that they would have beat up a Black girl on the street would have just, they wouldn't have even wanted to find out what would happen. But they knew they could get away with it with boys who also were innocent.
So there's so much to unpack, because as I receive everything you've been saying since we started, it all boils down to the same idea of the system, who we are in the system, and the functionality and the purpose of the narrative, really,
Yes.
what's more important, right? And not that the other is not important, but what I'm pointing out in this moment, because what you said just now, and then a few minutes ago reminds me, I'm trying to remember if it was The Half Has Never Been Told or All God's Children, one of these books, or even Capitalism and Slavery. If not one of these books, it might have been all three. I think it was The Half That's Never Been Told, when the idea of global slavery wasn't popular anymore. And there had to be this is not, I'm using this term, a marketing campaign so that people will stop looking at this differently.
Yes.
And you everything that you shared with us thus far pretty much argues about this campaign that allows for us to be treated this way. I want to with that being said, I want to circle back to something else. We got to get to you. You're talking, but we got to get to you. But before we get to you, I need to ask you about something you said when you first started. How the Black community, particularly in Clarksdale and Mississippi, think about these narratives that about us.
Right. Excellent. Very important. The way they think about that is indicative of the state of being, the state of things in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and the Mississippi Delta. And let me say this, I've lived in Clarksdale 10 years. I've lived in Mississippi 25 years, but the people who can best speak for Clarksdale are the people who were born and raised in Clarksdale. And I'm just saying that because this is in my role as the director. It's an honor for me to be here running a cultural arts center, but I am a servant to them. And that's the first thing that is in my work, as you kind of pointed out in one of your bio or lines, that, I have to be here in a way to create space for them to be themselves, not who someone else says they are. And that means I can't even say, unless but they've given me permission, I could say, I guess, by their acceptance. Now, somebody might come to me and say, no, we didn't, but I don't think so. I'll point them to, yes, those people gave it to me, and they'll look at, oh yeah, okay. But anyway, so I have to say that. But the perception of the crossroads around by Black people around here, there was recently a young Black artist who does a lot of murals here, but now he's traveling the world doing murals. And he just painted a mural at the crossroads. There's already at the crossroads, at the intersection of these two highways. It's actually not exactly at that location, but there's, this guitar sign with two guitars crossed, and there's a painting of the devil. And there's all these paintings and images around of the devil. Even when you go on Google and look up Clarksdale, it says the Devil's Crossroads.
Wow.
None of us said that. I looked at that. Who approved this? Definitely a Black person didn't do that. The Black people see that as the idea that Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil to play music. They see that as this interpretation that we are empty. We don't have any talent. We don't have any ability. The idea that was made of us, and that this is a replication of this idea that the only way we could do something good or be of worth or be extraordinary is to make a deal with the devil.
Mm.
It also goes along with this sort of narrative that blues simply or primarily or only arose out of the misery that slavery caused us.
Bingo. I'm not stopping you. Keep going, sis.
Yeah, so I mean that's it, so that there's this idea that this goes with this whole identity that's sort of been imposed upon us when we came here. You come, you can't speak your language, and I'm talking about right here where I'm sitting. This is where these things happened. We're brought up from the river from New Orleans or wherever into Mississippi, and a lot of people were brought into the Delta during the time of slavery. Were actually brought not only from Africa but from the Caribbean.
Correct.
People who had already been there. But anyway, so here it says, you come here, you can't speak your language, you can't acknowledge who you are, you can't play your music or your drums or this or that until it entertains us. So we were separated. There was an attempt to separate us from our cultural identity. But my work here is also based on the fact that they weren't able to successfully separate us from our cultural identity. What they were able to successfully separate us from was the words to identify it. And sometimes, and quite often, what happened is it distorted the function, but we still carry those practices that they tried to erase from us. Both blues and rhythmic rhyme are thousands of years. I mean, the pentatonic scale and singing these songs on these pentatonic melodies, we were doing that in Africa for thousands of years. For me, it arose in these areas because African people were brought to these areas. Okay. I learned later on in life from my African friends and scholars that rhythmic rhyme, what we call rap, is also something that we've been doing for tens of thousands of years. And when you actually hear those old versions of rhyme and rap, or such as Tasu, when you get the translation, or without the translation, when you see it in action, you know what it is. Because if I'm doing and then somebody else is and somebody, we know what it looks like. And you can see it in videos right now. These are traditional things that have been going on for thousands of years. But this is the type of knowledge we were separated from when we got here. And we've acknowledged that we were separated from our names and our surnames and our places of origin. But we may not have known that we were separated from, such as Tasu, such as Fantang, and ancestor to the blues. We were separated from those words so deeply that when the art, the practice itself, the technology, really, these are technologies,
right,
that serve a function in community. When the practice re-arose, we kind of forgot what it was for, which left it vulnerable and susceptible to be misused by others who had more power, influence, or resources, those others being that system that wants to relegate us to a cheap labor force. My friend, mentor, and teacher, Galel Kumba, the leader of the band Afrosippi, gave me a word that I just is central to our work, that really sort of paints that, labels this. He told me, he said one time, he's from Senegal, Mauritania area originally, that area, but he lives here now for a long time. But he carries this wisdom. He comes from a family who's carried this wisdom for thousands of years about the cultural art forms. And he said that African American people have what they call broken memory. It means that anyone who has broken memory, but it means that we carry the practices of our ancestors to today. And we even do them, but we forgot what they were for.
Mm-hmm.
And the broken memory can be healed. And when the broken memory is healed, when you remember what rhythmic rhyme is for, then whatever that you weren't healing in your community, that rhythmic rhyme heals, when you remember that this is what rhythmic rhyme heals, which is really a master teaching tool. That's why kids can rap a song they heard 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Just,
it's a master teaching
teaching
tool.
ABCs is rap.
Rhyme, exactly. Nursery rhymes. All of these are teaching tools. You don't put certain things in teaching tools. But if kids don't know that rap is teaching tools, if adults don't know that rap is teaching tools, if I take this mic and I don't know that this is a teaching tool, I can teach you the worst thing ever about yourself. And that's what's been happening when we entered into this industry, not knowing that this was a teaching tool. But so broken memory, when we remember that, okay, this is a teaching tool, now we can teach ourselves. No, we're not thugs. We're not YNs and Y whatever. These young people out there don't even know there was a time when we didn't use the N word in media. That's mind-blowing. Most of our life, we were thankful and fortunate that our parents and previous generations had done enough even into our life. In the community, yes, the word is used, but it's a different thing when it gets on media. And I think even this Spin That Song, part of the no judgment to the artist, part of the danger is, and part of what happened, what it's a sign of too, is that we've used this N word so much. So now these kids are calling themselves that, not even just in a verse or a line. I saw a busload of little kids on the way to Disney World singing this, chanting it in an anthem.
Right.
Here again, you have to understand the function of these different types of form. An anthem, that particular format of song, is not just entertaining, it inspires people to action.
It materializes things.
That's right.
It's a chant. You got me thinking about, do you remember the TV show Girlfriends?
Mm-hmm.
With Tracy Ellis Ross?
Right.
Yeah, I remember this one episode vividly. They probably one of the first television shows or media components, if you will, to ever address this. And the wild one that I guess never had a job and was always
like an artsy type one.
Yeah, she had a homegirl that was white, and her homegirl that was white was like the white girl that she invited to the barbecue, and they all started singing a song. And when the N-word came in the song, she said it, and everyone was like, "What?" But we've invited that comfort, right? KRS-One, who now a lot of people don't want to quote, and we can get into that. Maybe if not in this one, we could talk about a panel about certain things, and using KRS-One, R. Kelly, James Brown, and a whole bunch of our heroes that are flawed, right? But I remember KRS-One in one of his songs said, "Now you got white boys calling themselves niggas." You remember that?
Yeah. And that's an important point when we really look at the broader picture of all this, because again, I said I'm asserting it because I know I've studied the history and the development of this, and this is just what was on. It's funny because how we have to debate about all this stuff that was done on purpose.
I'm not debating with you.
No, I know you're not.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm talking about us as a community. We have what's going on? How did this happen? What's going on? When it was just orchestrated.
Right.
But we weren't in those rooms, so we're feeling it and wondering. So anyway, but what I'm saying is that what you just said about what KRS-One said, Now white boys are calling themselves nigga, and I don't even use that word. Like I wasn't raised using that word. I didn't judge my
Forgive
peers
me.
who did.
Sorry.
No. You don't have to apologize. We're here for a reason. You're good. Um, uh, that statement is very revealing if you just apply it to it. And I'm not saying anything about how I feel about him saying that, but when you apply it to the economic picture that's going on, I'm saying all of this is done to maintain the cheap labor force.
1000%.
Okay. Ultimately, within this economy, it does not matter what color those people are. It just has been so convenient that they did it to us so long ago. Just take us off the plantation and get us in the prison. This is where our power lies, because when we were on the plantation, when slavery was, and when we were enslaved in that way, we were physically confined. And that was what limited our agency and our power, because every human being has agency and power. A great teacher of mine, Garrett Duncan, who passed away, Washington University, it taught us that the idea that something else has power over us is an illusion. Someone said this, but he's the one who brought it to me and to us. The idea that someone else has power over us is an illusion. The reality is that they have power through us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's our participation in anything that gives it power. And that's across the board in humanity, not just with Black people, but it's of particular interest with us because we've been in this oppressive power dynamic for so long. So we really need to understand that. Now, when they put a chain over you, they limited your power. Your own power, because now you can't move and now you're in danger and now you might get killed. So instead of fighting that chain, you go ahead and do what you need to do to protect your family, stay alive, and go and do the work. And we lived like that for so long. When that ended, and now we still are in this place where we're serving as the cheap labor force, and it's detrimental to our culture and community. But we have a choice and we have agency. No one is physically putting us there. Because of that, there was a need when we were moved, when slavery was moved into the prisons. It wasn't going to be enough to now say, just expect, well, they'll go in there. Right. So one, we had to be criminalized. Our image had to be criminalized, and that was the purpose of Birth of a Nation. To criminalize it. Okay, now they're not in the fields, but they are criminals. So don't be surprised that we're going to lock them all up. Okay. Now, moving forward from that, when you get to this, I never finished that earlier, the power shift that I was talking about. It really has to do with the 80s, and I'll just give it. This is all a part of this is all part of moving us into the prison. And again, just like the caricatures did, excusing this in everybody's eyes. Because how could America look at prisons that are 80% Black when we're not 80% of the population of America? Mm-hmm. Or whatever the percentage is today. Because this is how they see us. This is the identity that's been imposed upon us. So when it came to rap, and the rap left the streets and went into the industry, the reason that they chose rap is because they needed to find some way to deal with our agency, our power that says we want to be who we want to be. We want to do what we want to do. We want to take care of our people and our families and our children. That's who we are. That's how our culture is. Just thought of a Chubb Rock saying kids don't need to hear all of that in the rap, or Cool Mo D, about the Wild Wild West, and we didn't use guns. We would just fight if we had to, but we didn't shoot each other. That was us teaching each other. And remind me to say later that this hardcore and even vulgar element existed in the ancient rap, but for a very specific reason that we have forgotten. And if we remembered it, it would change everything. But so this rap, when it moved into the industry, the reason they needed rap, because they had already set up a criminal entity for us to participate in, which was the Oliver North and the bringing in of crack cocaine into our neighborhood, or cocaine to turn to crack. You know, people can look that up on their own, if you know whether it's declassified information.
Yeah. And I mean, we know for a fact that hip hop and crack birthed and came into existence simultaneously, and hip hop went through the United States as crack was being carried throughout the United States. We know that, but go ahead.
Right, exactly. We know that, and so what we have to look at is why? How did that happen? Because it wasn't like hip hop started because of crack. Absolutely not. Right, exactly. So, but what happened is just when they brought in the crack and that amped up. You create a crack epidemic, you set up these drug dealers, and then you do a war on them, a war on drugs, the drugs you brought in, which is clearly a way to get us into the criminal justice system and into the new location of slavery.
1,000%.
Okay. Then, but the rap part, the reason why that had to happen in terms of the system, why they needed rap, because drugs weren't cool. Killing wasn't cool.
No, you're right.
All this stuff wasn't cool, meaning we wouldn't have chosen to use our power and our agency to say, yeah, I want to destroy my community and see our young boys killing each other and stuff. We never would have said that that's what we wanted. But if that's what was needed in their sight, or that was an unintended and to them unimportant consequence of criminalizing our image so that we could be pushed into this prison pipeline, we wouldn't have chosen that. So what they had to do was come into our community and find our cultural tool with which we shape and teach ourselves who we are, and buy that tool from us so that we would believe in these things and want to do these things and feel excited about these things. And nothing can get a person more excited and hyped than rhythmic rhyme to a rhyme to a rhythm.
1 billion%.
It makes everything cool. So anything you put on the rhyme, Coca-Cola or whoever, they know that. If you want to sell something, do a little rhyme rap. Everybody's using rap in marketing. So this was a way to, instead of the chain, let's get these rappers in here. The community will listen to them, especially the youth. Tell them, be more street, like we've already said. Give them a big dollar amount, looks big to them today, to get in front of a mic just like that and say bees and call the women out their name, call themselves out, say that they want to kill somebody, sing about killing. This was just a marketing thing, but we were hired to do it, and that's where the power is that we're not realizing. No. When they did that, when they chose rap to be that mental chain, because they knew the power of rap and saw the influence it was having in the community, they said, we need that influence to move the people where we want them to go. So they knew that power and they came to us. But I don't know, the mistake, I guess you can say they made that we have yet to take advantage of is they gave our powerful art form the biggest platform in the world. No, right? I mean, blues is the most influential genre, if you could say, in terms of how many forms have that element in it, in my opinion, in some people's opinion. Who knows what's really real. But the most popular form, if you ask me, in the world today is rap.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think that takes away from blues being the most popular form, because I think hip hop, rap as a whole is the great grandchild of the blues. I think rap appears to supersede any other Black transmission because of something that you said earlier, the type of technology rap had its pinnacle in.
Right. That's right.
That's all. But I think Black transmission is just Black transmission, and it affects everyone.
It does. It does.
I think rap seems more tangible because it is rhymes, and people, like you said, associate that nursery rhymes. It's intricate like the blues, but it
Mm-hmm.
appears simple like the blues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Right.
I will add to it. Um, one of the things that later on I found out, well,
Mm-hmm.
not found out, noticed, because I remember one time my brother and I was driving around Brooklyn, listening to one of our songs. And he's like, "Wow, we've never seen this many dudes on the street,"
Yeah.
and it was crazy. But what something I realized later on in life, the mid to late '90s to the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
that's when rappers started talking about crack. Crack was already dead for 10 years.
Oh yeah, they were. Oh, you. That's a very important. That's right. You. I hadn't even thought about it in those terms, but you're totally. I know. It's easy to. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of crazy the rebirth of our trauma,
Right.
but we relived it like sonically. It's crazy.
Well, and I would say the rebirth of the trauma, but all and as well, it's the. So this is the generation that was born to the generation of the crack epidemic. These
Yes.
were the children of that generation, and whether they were personally affected in their family by it or not, this thing had already been set in motion in our community, and the industry had already made this decision about which way things would go, which by the way has been so impactful that now that even when we have independent artists, they're still following the industry's method or type of music. That's how impactful it was. But when you like with Biggie did the 10 Crack Commandments, that was way after the beginning of the crack epidemic. But that's so important that you pointed out, because what you're pointing out in the systematic sense is when the system says, wait a minute, they're calming down, get the rappers on it, get the rappers on it. And that's what's so important about this song, Spin That. uh and it's not about the young lady who made it, but what's happening. I want to know what you think about this, because I was really thinking about this. Why is it that this song is so causing uproar, even for me, because when I saw those children singing, I said we are in a state of emergency right now. Again, one, because it's an anthem of crime. An anthem, there's no doubt about whether or not an anthem glorifies something. We used to have this debate. Well, is it glorifying or not? Any kind of musical, I'm not even a musicologist to somebody, but not in the
You're gonna
form.
get to what you are soon.
Okay. But an anthem inspires. So when I see these little kids, and I'm not going to get into the details of how it inspires, but that's what it does. It inspires, like you said, it makes things happen. It makes action take place. And what's interesting is, one, that it's a women rapper. Of course, we have plenty of women rappers who rap about a lot of things, but a very important thing that happened, and this is what when they were saying, well, there was so much rap about killing, and now you want to be upset because we're making a song about stealing and scamming. You, as in, it's not a violent crime. And while I understand, their logic, young as it may be, I'm not degrading, I understand that logic. But when you're aware of this systematic thing that's going on, it's very clear why that is. This is could be catastrophic for us as Black people, because it's already been catastrophic because this image has been so effectively applied to Black men. The image of violent crime. And unfortunately, we've normalized it, allowed it to become normalized as we debated whether or not it had an impact.
Or if
Now
it's
we're
even
seeing the
true.
impact. What'd you say?
I said, or if it's even true.
Right, right. Exactly. That too. And
We,
then,
we, we're not the ones in history books that's going around the planet destroying everything. But I digress.
exactly. We're not violent people in general, So so what happened though is that you have this image of violent crime that has, at least since even the 80s with television, been associated with black men in Birth of a Nation. Okay, that's when the violent image, so that the violent image of black malehood, and then an overly sexualized image and objectified and misogynistic image of black womanhood. But we were not, our women, our image as women was not part of this poisonous assignment of crime. So the filling of the prisons was really directed towards black men, which is a travesty that we still have that we need to solve now. Well, while we're still trying to solve that travesty, unknowingly or unintentionally, I should say, I'm just assuming that this was unintentional on the part of the young lady of Young Miami, Carisha, I think is her real name. That with once her art was pulled into this system and exposed on BET, which is good for her and her success, but BET is a corporate entity that knows all of this. So for BET to highlight her and Lauryn Hill at the same time, they knew what they were doing. Okay, just like they had Sexy Red on. Again, this is nothing against Sexy Red or Young Miami. This is what the system we need to be aware of, and we need to be able to speak to each other and hear each other. So when that song, this Spin That Song, it highlights a non-violent crime that is often perpetuated by young adult women or young women.
Non-black women mostly, but
what'd you say?
Non-black women mostly.
Right. Mm-hmm. And again, and I'm just saying it's associated with them. So I don't know if I used that word, but I should have if I didn't.
No, you did.
Okay. So again, and I know you're clear on this, but I'm not assigning it to them, but I'm saying that we've associated it with them. So now that if scamming is associated now with women, and so far this thing has been relegated horrifically to our men and to our men committing violent crimes, this is what we use to squeeze them down this pipeline into prison. This song, by being catapulted into virality by BET, broadened from not just violent crime that is associated with blackness, but all crime. All crime was already associated with us, but it was hardcore on the violent crime. There's been a lot of killing, real killing in the rap industry.
Yeah. You're in Mississippi, so you're across the street from Memphis. Mm-hmm. And I love Memphis, but the energy shifts when you drive in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know.
And I'm gonna be real about Memphis, and I don't know a lot of people from Memphis, so they may say something to me, and I invite the conversation because I'm interested. You know, I grew up, as I said, in the '90s in Kansas City, Missouri, and going to high school there. I was born in Chicago, but left as a little girl, and anyway, I was in Kansas City in the '90s, and it was very violent, high level of violence. At 14 or 15, I just on my own chose to stop watching the news. Because every single solitary night, a black boy or more was killed. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't take looking at this day after day. And I realized that me looking at it wasn't helping it. At that young age, that's how bad it was. We lost people that we cared about. Close people, friends, schoolmates. You know, our loved ones are affected by gun violence, and it's not cool.
No.
Right, exactly. You know, if you experience that, you know it's not cool. So there was no, you know, I kicked it to what it was Cypress Hill, Holding Your Head. That used to be, I used to holding your head till I saw some things. I couldn't speak those words anymore, no matter how good the beat is. Okay. So when I left and went on in life and I came down to Mississippi, you know, that was about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later. I had gone through college. I graduated high school, gone through college, and I came down here right out of college. And I went out in Memphis a couple of times. And this is no judgment. You know, 3 6 Mafia was big at the time.
Right.
And I'm going into the clubs and, you know, I'm hearing this all kind of straight violent stuff to bumping beats. And my honest thought, and not even criticizing, man, I was just thinking, dang, they don't know down here this isn't cool. They still think it's cool down here to kill and rap about killing. I was hurt. I was like, oh, because I hadn't been. Everywhere you live, you get in your little bubble, and it's like, I'm not saying that didn't happen in Kansas City, the music and stuff,
Right.
but I just couldn't. The way it was so big, I was just like, and then you see the crime rate. But we don't understand. Again, we're thinking that this is entertainment because this socioeconomic system tells us this is entertainment, but art shapes reality just as much as it reflects reality. And that's a real scientific fact.
So let me ask you, a lot of these titles that I'm gonna throw out there
Okay.
are reflective of each other. They intersect on so many ways.
Mhm.
You've mentioned a few of them already. I'm just gonna throw them out there, and you tell me which one you particularly identify with. Right?
Okay.
Sociologists,
Okay.
musicologists,
Hmm.
ethnomusicologists, folklorists,
Hmm.
cultural anthropologists. Am I getting close? Humanitarian, cultural
These.
worker.
You're all over it. I mean, you're close. You're right on point. I'm just thinking about all those terms, and as I listen to each one, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of into that kind. And I just ended up, since we decided, really honestly, to do this, I decided to look up the formal definition of ethnomusicologist. And I looked it up, and I can't remember what it said right now. But when I read it, I was like, oh, that is what I do. I can't remember verbatim what it said. But around the cultural function of the music, or the function of the music, in the cultural perspective. And I said, yeah, that's what I do. When in school, I wanted to study sociology. They didn't have it. Strangely, at that time at Washington University, I ended up taking some anthropology classes and really loving them, and they really, guided in some way my thought. But is at the same time, and anthropology knows this, and they address it in many ways. It's very it's often this otherness,
Yes.
you
Yep.
know. Um, and so I think each of those terms that you use, there's some aspect of my work that is under those umbrellas. But I would say, I guess two things. One, after I got my undergrad, another thing that I learned from Gary Duncan and others there is that the academy has its own agenda,
Right.
just like the music industry and everything else have their economic agendas. In the role of the academy, I also used to read a lot of Noam Chomsky or watch him before whatever. But anyway, so he talks about this. Many people talk about the role of the academy is to be the authority on not like to create the knowledge that supports maintaining these economic structures. And I knew I needed to go deeper, into something that was healing and beyond these structures. So that's why when I left undergrad, I didn't go right into school as my parents probably hoped I would, right into graduate school and PhD. And I just so far have continued my education in the community and my work. And it's been very fruitful. But I do, sometimes want to or need to and do sometimes engage in the academic world. So I'm saying that to say these titles, are often in the academic world. But once I got out and I was just living life, and I was seeing certain passions, because no one would have ever told me I would have been a blues scholar. I would have been like, what in the world are you talking about? I never could imagine that. But when I was seeing the things that were drawing me in, and at one point I asked myself, a little later in my life, what is the unifying element to my passions? The first thing that I realized as I looked at each one was that they were all about some form of transformation, process of change, process of
Hmm.
transforming, whether that's transforming the individual, the family, the community, the psyche, whatever, the releasing mental conditioning. From drawing to rap to this to that, every one of them had an element of teaching the process of transformation. And then I thought about, well, another word is change for transformation. And most of the time when we say, well, we want to change something, the first thing that we associate it with change is politics,
Mm,
government, structures. Those are things that were created to for change to no not to they were created to they no I'm not going to say what they were created for, but in the process of change they offer, you want to change something, put your ballot over here, okay, or whatever, put up for a bill, do this is a process of change that is made available to us, but it's not the only process of change.
mm,
So when I looked at the processes of change that I was interested in, which were not politics, I said, well, what is different about the processes of changes that I'm finding myself learning about and sharing about, engaging in, than this political? And I looked at all of them, and for me, I came to the term that the processes of change that I teach about are what I call natural.
mm.
By that, what I mean simply is it's outside of any systemic structure. It's just how humans can get how change is the natural process of life anyway. It
Right.
actually is. So we can engage in change without going through these structures. But the society and the way we live has identified change so much with these institutional structures that we're not imagining, or even if we imagine it, we feel like it's just an imagination, not a reality, that we could actually change things without going through that. And so when you're not talking about what's created by the system, you're talking about what just is. I chose to say that I teach natural methods of transformation.
I like that. I like that. And so, is that why you've tagged yourself change here?
You don't know that. I don't know if I told you this or not. My artist name is Change. I
Aha.
don't think I told you though.
No, you did not.
Mhm. Yeah, like uh I was telling some people, some people who know me, a lot of people, most people don't know that. Even people who know me, a lot of them don't know that. So I ran into some friends, here in Clarksdale a couple days ago or a week ago or whatever, who I don't remember that we were outside and something came up where somebody said change, and I said, oh, that's my artist name. There were maybe 3 or 4 of us sitting there, and 2 of these people I just met through a mutual friend. So they were like, what did you say? I said my artist name is Change, and they said Chain. Your artist name is Chain, like a link in chain. I said no, Change, and I shook my pocket to get them to hear, and they were like, oh, change, like pocket change. And I said, that's the word, but no, not like pocket change. And they're looking at me trying to figure out what I'm talking about. I said, like, my name is Change. They're waiting. I came to rearrange. When I get on the mic, then won't nothing be the same.
Uh-oh.
I laughed at them. They were so sweet, But my that is so yeah, because change is, what I realized my life, my passion, my drive is about the process of change. I did a presentation about maybe a month ago. I was fortunate enough to be part of this National Arts Futures Fellowship. It was an online 6-month experience with 24 artists and art people and culture bearers across the country. And each of us had a project that we're working on, and mine is about activating the process of change in community without the need for institutions. And it is through artistic means, and a lot of people think that's foo-foo or something. No, this is measurable and real and more impactful than most other, and that's also a research thing, not just my research. But
Right.
anyway, I have a reference for that one, Donella Meadows, The Leverage of Change. The on this leverage points in change. It's a lever I got this from the fellowship, really, that I was already doing this work, but I hadn't seen this graphic. And so I said, oh, I need this. It's an image. It was made in the 80s based on the research of this woman, Donella Meadows, about systems change. And so along this lever, it's showing different things we can do to change our reality, social reality. And so there are change the measurements, move resources, things like this that have measurable impact. And as it goes up, the methods become less accessible or more difficult, but more impactful. Okay? So a second to the top of what's very difficult but very impactful is to change the system itself. That's not at the top, it's second to the top.
Right.
Okay. To just get in there and say, you know what, this is messed up. Let's stop it. Let's stop with all this, making money off people and using people. Anyway, if we were to do that, it would be highly impactful. But other than that, above the changing its system itself, it identifies mindset change as the most impactful way to create social change, to change society or community. And mindset change itself, and this is where I'm coming in, because of my work, I understand, I already know that mindset change happens through the arts. It happens through the sensory perception, specifically. But I'm saying I define arts as something created to be experienced by the senses. So that through that process of experiencing things through our senses, there's a direct formulation or shaping of our mind, our beliefs. And I'm going to be very clear about that in a moment, but after I finish what I'm saying. So when things go into our senses, it affects our mind, it affects our thoughts, it shapes our thoughts. Our thoughts therefore shape our thoughts, then influence our actions.
Right.
Our actions are reality.
Right.
Okay? So if you can influence the thought, you can influence the action, you change reality. The way to influence thought is via sensory perception. The ears, which hear our music. The eyes, which hear the films, the shows, the YouTube channels, the newspaper. All this stuff goes in through our sensory perception. This is a function. Let's go to the eye, and this is the basis from the drawing part. When we look at something and perceive it with our eye, very simplified description of what's happening. The light around us is hitting an object. When it hits that object, I have a rock right here, we'll use this. When the light hits this object, it bounces off of the object and it reflects everywhere, but we have these sensors, light sensors here called eyes. So when that light hits that sensor, the first thing that happens is that sensor picks up the likeness and the form of how the light is hitting that, the form of it. It processes it upside down.
Mm.
And so it's first upside down, that reflection. We're not consciously aware of that moment. It hasn't registered yet in our brain. That's how minuscule that moment is. In an imperceptible amount of time, that image goes to our right hemisphere, which processes visual information, sensory information only. And I'm distinguishing that it does not process mental words, language. It processes what it's experiencing. And again, I'm grossly oversimplifying,
Right.
to make the point, okay? So we say that now, so this image has now flipped back right side up and it's in the right hemisphere. But still in the right hemisphere, it's not anything yet but a form, a shape, a color. Then in an imperceptible amount of time, it goes across the corpus callosum and to the left side. It's registered. The left side is where language is. Again, overly simplifying, some people would be like, stop saying that. It's the point to make the point. I don't care if it's your left, right, elbow, or knee. I'm talking about how things get into our mind. Okay?
Right.
So wherever language is, once that visual part reaches and touches the language part, then the name of that thing arises. That's a rock.
Mm.
Or I see you the same way. As soon as I see you, I feel that's Lamont. I'm just Dr. Pearlie. If you're far, far away from me and I can just see you coming and I only see your form, it's not going to register yet in that language part. I'm not going to identify you by a word or a name yet. But as you come closer and that visual part is connecting with a previous association I've had between seeing you and you telling me who you are, and that is then recalled. And now I have a reference. Oh, okay, I know who that is. Okay. That's how it works. So we know this also because this is how we acquire language. When you're a kid and you get the bottle, you get hungry, you touch the bottle, sensory. You smell the bottle, you put it in your mouth and taste it. You see it. You have all these sensory perceptions. Okay, this object. When you put that in and drink and feel fulfilled, now you've made an association in your mind between that shape, that feel, that smell, and your food or your milk, because you heard that word milk. So now you've associated, and so now this is a symbolic association that exists in the mind between this bottle, the word milk, and my hunger. This is how we engage in the world, and all of this happens through our sensory perception. When we understand that, then we can think differently about the impact of art. And understand when we see our image next to violence and misogyny, a mental association is being created, whether you want it to or not.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And this is so ultimately we're talking about psychological warfare.
And again, because they needed our agency, they weren't going to put us in chains. They needed us to want to be this. And it was our art form that had the influential power to make our children want to go in that direction. Nobody else's art form had that power over us. Only our art form could have it. So that's why they had to hire us to do this. And now we are selling this image to ourselves. And we can change it. Like change.
Change. So, this was a very powerful and impactful episode. And a lot of these concepts, we just have to talk. We got to make some things happen.
We do. And activating is the most important part. You know, we can talk about, the ancestral knowledge, which is, where did these things come from and what purpose did they serve? We can talk about and identify what purposes do we need them to serve today in our contemporary reality where our children are dying on the streets type thing. But because of that, then we must activate this knowledge right now in a way that brings about the healing. So anyway, you already know that.
But this is for our audience,
everybody,
right?
That's right.
And so this is the last thing I want to ask you, and we're going to have to do this again. No, I'm very serious. We have to do this again.
I would love to.
Being in Clarksdale, seeing how the blues is presented and how it's presented by a certain group, how it's received and how it's received by, and this is the weird thing. When I say the certain group on the reception, on the receiving end, I'm talking about the people who come from the blues. This
right, exactly, yeah.
Because there's two groups of people that are, well, there's more than two. When I say two groups, I don't just mean white and black. I mean, one group is all non-black, and one group is black that come from, whether we engage it, we're descended from it, something. And there's two
Yes,
different things happening,
correct.
and I think of Brian Foster Williams, I think.
Yes. B. Brian Foster.
Yes, Why I Hate the Blues, I think.
The title is I Don't Like the Blues by B. Brian Foster, who's black, who did research at the University of Mississippi as well. And he's in the Carolina right now. I'm not going to mess up which one. We look him up because I just can't recall where in North Carolina. No, I don't know. But anyway, Brian, I mean, we've had an occasion to meet, I'm not, it's not like but we have interacted, and his book is very important and it's probably to me the best text to really right now to understand what's happening in Clarksdale, what it means to other people, to this world and country, it really economically, and how it's nothing more than the continuation of the de-evolution or evolution or transformation of our exploitation.
Right.
Okay. And for the term I don't like the blues came from the fact that he would talk to Black people in Clarksdale about blues, and he would say, what do you think about blues? And they would basically say, I don't like blues. And what they were, but he mentioned one woman in the book in particular, he made up names, but he said this woman said that, and then she said, listen to my favorite song, and she pushed the radio, and it was a blues song. It was like a contemporary blues song. And he was confused, and then he started to understand that what's happening is when you first say blues, and you come in Clarksdale and say blues in public, even the Black people have now associated the public use of that word with the appropriated form of the music, or not even just the appropriate. I didn't just say that, with this sort of, like you said, non-Black community who's fixated on a certain type of blues that keeps us relegated to struggle, sadness, and you hear that a lot. People come down because they've so associated blues with struggle. Blues tells every truth. The good, the bad, the wonderful, it's not just about sadness, but we in this country, again, have been, this identity's on us that we're supposed to struggle and all this. So that's what he was referring to, that when they say, I don't like the blues, they're talking about they don't like this thing that in some ways people have felt they have identified as blues. Even some of the Black people, I've heard Black people here say they took it from us. It's not ours anymore. And what they mean is what they hear up and down the street and on advertises the Clarksdale blues is not necessary. It's not what they know as blues. But I say back, no one can take anything from you. They can do it. They can sell it in a different way, but you still have what you have, and what you have is still what people are coming here for.
Right. I was in Ground Zero with my family, and this busload of international travelers, all non-Black. They were what you would classify as white, but I hate giving cultural or ethnic description to color, because
separate things
overlap
sometimes. But because we made them right.
But for the basis of this conversation, and just to be clear, there was a busload of white international people, and one family sat with us and was very clear. They don't come to Mississippi to see any white blues performers. They're only coming to see Black ones. I don't even know how to feel about that. Go ahead. I want you to go ahead.
I want you to go ahead. I want to listen.
No, I don't know how to feel. I want to hear you.
So when they said that to you, were they, what was their motivation for telling you that in that moment, if you have a sense of why they decided to say that at the moment that they told you that?
Well, you if you don't know, I talk to everybody and I ask a whole bunch of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have been asking them about
Why they came.
yes.
And to that point of why they said they came, did they express to you whether or not they feel how they felt about the goal that they had in mind? Were they able to do that?
Yeah, they were very explicit about
Oh,
I
they
didn't
intentionally
travel.
made sure that they did
Yeah,
that.
they were
Okay.
very clear. Them and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people on that bus. We didn't travel all this way to see white people play black music. We traveled this way to see what they thought was the real thing.
But what I'm saying is the goal they had to travel and see the real thing. Did that happen?
Well, I mean, from
I mean,
who I
the thing they were calling real.
right. Well, I'm going to answer. You're flipping the script, but I will answer the question.
I'm sorry.
You didn't think
You
I
know,
caught that? But
no, look, you weren't supposed to call it out because look, there's certain things I can't say.
right. Okay. So what I will tell you, sorry, what I will tell you is
Okay.
who I saw on the stage was the real blues.
Right, whatever. And there are, yeah,
I'll
yes.
say that.
Okay, thank you.
You know who
That's
they are, and
right,
I'll tell
yeah,
you
and
off
that's a good
air.
answer. And see, and who would know why you and I both don't feel like saying certain things,
Right.
and we seem to be speaking pretty freely. But so, for instance, I was at a one time there was a festival going on. A lot. Clarksdale is world famous. It's a small town, 13,000 people, 80% black. It's been declining in population. Everyone who's here says, uh, maybe not 10 years ago, that's when I came, but 20 years ago, it was busier. 30 years ago was even more busy. It was like it's still like a mecca, but it as in that people travel here from all over the world for this culture. That's what I mean by that. And as well, it's a place where our culture has survived deeply and strongly. And so but the young people or even people 40, 50, 60 would say Clarksdale used to be a booming town. You had the black outdoor market, and there's still plenty of black businesses because it's a black town. But there was a decision, and Brian Foster writes about in his book, it's some 30 something years ago, to really intentionally set up a structure to identify and use blues as an economic driver. That when that happened is very much like rap or every art form of any culture. When it enters into an industry and becomes commodified, now it's being used for something else. And so when there was a decision to say, let's use blues music, tourism to bring people and money into the Delta, which is considered and listed statistically one of the poorest economic regions, and the poverty is high now. The level of poverty is high, but also the level of per capita millionaires is high. So honestly, what I would say is it's not that it's the poorest, it may be, but it's really the greatest disparity.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the wealth and you see the poverty, and they live, intertwined, but still, with this dynamic. So when the music was chosen, again, that's what I said, this evolution or de-evolution or whatever, this transformation of exploitation of us. We were brought here to be exploited for our physical labor in the fields. When that changed due to the new machinery, which was first used right here in Coahoma County, those machines that were created that replaced the enslaved or sharecropper labor, that first happened where we are, at Hobson Commissary, Shaka Bean.
Really?
That's the historical location of when that was it. Now, unless I'm getting my memory wrong today, but yes, that's where that happened. And so that's very significant, in terms of
That's a big piece of information I needed to know. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
no problem. No problem. So this is ground zero about the economic transformations in all of America. Any large scale economic transformation that happened in America, I haven't studied all of them, but wouldn't doubt, I would probably safely bet that the Delta was deeply related to many of them from the past to recent. Okay. So anyway, you see this labor, the machine is made now. We don't need to have all these people picking the cotton. We have a machine that can go through and do it.
The cotton
But
gin.
And I have to remember the name because it's not the gin. I should have touched up on this, but the gin is in the building. This is the machine that goes through the fields and picks.
Got you. Understood.
And I can't forget. I don't know the proper
It's
terminology.
okay. It's okay.
And so, so now they say, well, we've got a machine to do it. But like I mentioned about the trees for the furniture in the paper store, now we've got all these people who we brought here to make money off of, and they're not doing the thing that we were using them to make money off of anymore, because now we have a more efficient and cheaper way, even than them and their free labor.
Right.
Faster and efficient, therefore cheaper and more profitable. So when that happened and Black people are here, then it's like, well, let's go back before that. When slavery ended, and we can't force them to be here. We'll do sharecropping and invite them to be here. But it's common and it's known here. Sharecropping was just another form of slavery.
Absolutely.
You live in the house you don't own. You pay for everything you do. You pay them. They're giving you bills. Oh, you used the grass. You sat on the lawn. You looked at the sky. You ate some food. You did this while you were picking the cotton. And you come with I picked this much cotton. Well, this is how much you get paid, but you owe me 100 times that.
Right.
So there's this movement. Again, you have the 13th Amendment that says, here's another movement. This is very important about the Delta, the private prison industry. When that happened, and because this was labor central, so much money was being made off of our work down here that it boosted this whole economy. They couldn't just say, we're going to just let them go and be happy and free and lose any. They should have. That was what would have been humane. But, it felt too profitable. So the private prison, we have the transformation, sharecropping and private prisons. But the private prisons, to my knowledge and research and understanding, I would say that Parchment Prison was, if not the first, I see it, I understand it to be the first private prison. It was the beginning of private prisons.
The blueprint, the quintessential, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. The blueprint. That's a great way to put it. Where you have an actual plantation, a farm, just like the farm we were on, that has now been turned into a prison. And you have Black people not only in prison there, but living there. Families and people living on this plantation, still working. And then you now that it's a prison, it's legally able, it's the blueprint for private prisons. We're in that. So I said this place is so influential. But I was saying, you asked me, the blues. So, cotton fields, sharecropping, prison. How do we continue to make money off of these Black people? We've got so many of them sitting around, laying around or whatever they think, as if we don't have our own life. Oh, that culture, that music they used to play back there, the way they used to sing to, when we were getting on their nerve. No, I'm just kidding. That music, people love it. I bet we can make money off of that, and that's where we got to. But and then there was a legal, one of the previous governors, maybe Haley Barber, check if I'm wrong, y'all forgive me, signed this blues sort of commission into being around amping up blues tourism, not only in Clarksdale and the Delta, but in Mississippi. But there's such a stronghold of blues in Clarksdale for many reasons, some mystical and mythical. By the way, I'm one block from the river Sam Cooke was born by, the Sunflower River, which is so funny because when I moved here, I didn't even know that Sam Cooke was from here. Because, and this is what the purpose of this center was for. There was no place for the community to celebrate itself authentically without the lens of tourism. And so we could try to provide a place where we can be ourselves, celebrate ourselves, engage with one another and with visitors around our culture, not as a tourism product. As you mentioned before, so blues was seen, and you can still see this now. And I'm not trying to condemn every white person in the blues or anything like that.
Right.
I'm saying systematically and structurally, you still see millions of dollars coming into Clarksdale, and you still see basically the Black community feels disenfranchised from its own cultural asset.
But the reason why we got to stop there,
because we've been out here like 5 hours. No,
well, that's not even the issue. We've done. We could be here for 10, but what you just brought up is a whole different conversation, and not a different, but another arm of the conversation.
Exactly, you're right.
And I want to discuss that, which I actually want that to be a group conversation, because I left. When I initially in person met you, I was out there doing interviews, and there was a couple of things that I left with. Commodification was one of them, and I was able to just keep listening to those interviews and just thinking about stuff. And we're going to talk about that another time off the air.
Most definitely.
Because yes. However, what we're here today for is to celebrate you and your work, right? And thank you for doing what you do. You're the African American Folklorist for the month of July.
Thank you. Okay, this is a huge honor for me. And if I may say, especially not working in the academy, I'm deep in community. Sometimes I don't even get up for a lot of air enough. And I know you also are deep in community and in many formats and ways. And so this provides me an opportunity to really intentionally sit down and get to see what other people are doing. I've seen so much similarity and inspiration on your platform from the people that you have. And so this is such a powerful thing that you're doing, and I'm really happy and honored to be a part of it.
One, thank you, and two, thank you.
You're welcome.
Because the reality of the situation is, because of what you and the group of folks that we honor, what you all are engaged in, you're not going to have time to come up for air because you're really doing it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And I that's what I feel. I say this often. When not all of the people in the academies, but a lot of times when you got to read certain things or you speak to certain people, I feel like a 1970s or early 80s or late 60s cop show where you want to tell somebody, get from behind the desk and get in the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Get the beat.
Because it's a totally different thing when you're actually working with the people. A lot of this stuff don't work. And so that's what we try to, and more importantly, I love having these conversations with Black folk doing the work that may not even think of themselves as these terminologies, but are actually doing the work, because it allows us to not only just broaden, but instead of unconsciously training over here what we've been talking about, we unconsciously training our community and our tribe and our folk and our families to document, to value our systems.
Exactly, our systems. And to understand that it's not just because it's ours and we want it. It's because there's meaning in it that we need.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. because that's really what it's about. It's not about being divisive. It's just stuff we need.
Yeah, that's it. We need it. And what you this platform for me, when I looked at it, I said, well, this what it's doing is really a providing an alternative, and only alternative because we've been so narrowly focused as a society, but an alternative sense, authority, like an alternative system of authority. Whereas before, if you got to be university, this, that, the other, but you, by bringing all these people together in such a professional, thoughtful, profound way, without the requirement that they have those titles. Because I don't have any of those titles you named by my name, but you've identified my work as that, and I understand it too. But just for you to invite me and give a platform and say you are one, come. That's in a live way what the university is doing, giving, providing a platform that helps people perceive something in a sense of authority. Now here I am saying people are perceiving, but we do need to do that. And in your case, you're finding something with real meaning, not just for some kind of agenda. So you're really creating something, and also the catalog and library of the people you've interviewed, amazing, powerful people that I've seen, the people I've been looking at, each one, I'm like, oh, this person is interesting, and that's, so that in itself becomes a library and a resource, or you already know, but an archive, but that the community can access without having to go in, whether or not you're a part of a institution or not.
Right. No, only institution I'm part of is Jack Dapper Blues.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I dig it, and you get it, because that's really the lack of access forces us to make spaces where we can have access,
Right.
and name things for ourselves.
Right. And I like how you said it forces us to, because that does make a lot of sense. It in a way, it does force us to, right? But only a person who would answer that calling would say it forces us to, because you saw that gap and that chasm and that opening, that hole where we could have a place for ourselves to name stuff, and then you said, I've been forced to make it. And you did it.
All praise to thank you. I appreciate you. Now,
you're welcome.
Tell the people where they can find you and your work and your organization.
You can find Crossroads Cultural Arts Center at our website is actually www.clarksdales with the C Crossroads. Interesting. .com.
I'm looking for it now. I thought I had it on my I thought I had it up, and I was just going to put the handle. So
okay.
I'm going to put the handle.
There's something
right
on
now.
the screen, but
that might be the wrong. That might have been what I thought I did, and it wasn't. That was the Ridge. Hold on, Crossroads. Wait, Oh no, that's something else. Crossroads. Say it to me again. Can you hear me? You muted yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. What are you asking me? The formal name or the Earl?
Yes.
The website, the URL is Clarksdale's Crossroads.com.
Got it. I think. Clarksdale's Crossroads.
.com. No spaces, no dashes. S on both ends of the word, both words.
Got it. All right. Because I want to put it up.
Thank you. I also have a personal one I need to update, but it does give people a sense of the broader work.
What? Come on, I'll put that up too. Tell me.
It's 321become.com. The numbers 321 become.
Got you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Freedom of the mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Y'all see it right here, good folk. Where else could they find you? Is there any other place you want them to know?
They can look up, they can go to the Artist Change at the Artist Change, no spaces, TheArtist, Artist Change, CHANGE on Instagram. But I will say right now it's private. But if people want to follow it, they can I'll go in and start opening some, the fellowship or whatever you call it.
So it's at Artist Change or at The Artist?
The Artist Change. Mm-hmm.
Wait, it's not plural. Hold on, let me fix that.
Mm-mm.
I'm putting it so y'all can see it and find it. All right, good folks, y'all know what this is and what it's about. You know what we do. That's it right there, right?
I think so. Oh, that's what's wrong. My screen is I had full screen so I couldn't read. Yes, that's it. That's exactly right. The Artist Change.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we want to thank you, good people. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Sister Change, thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My sister told me that there was something I need to do. Well, I told her I was thinking about doing. She said, "Well, okay, do it." Even though she told me that I had to do it, and I didn't do it in our conversation. But if we're out of time, we'll do it in our next conversation.
Would you like to do it before we stop?
I love to, and
Go for it.
you can do what see how you feel. But I need to because I don't want to get in trouble by my twin.
All right, go for it.
And this has to do with again what's going on right now, and it particularly with the song "Spin That." This is why it needs to be said right now. This is for Young Miami and her peers and supporters, our community. We are her peers and supporters, as well as NDRE and her peers and supporters. We are that. This is for all of us. Because there's something I feel we haven't clearly told the young people, and we get upset with them when they do something and we haven't made a problem clear. But so I remember you got to teach or share before you can get upset, I think. So this is something has got to be done when something is hurting our daughters and sons, whatever color is holding the gun. Put it down and bring life to our daughters and sons. Interestingly enough, for the longest time, I only said sons right there because I was specifically talking to the men, the boys. And I would bring in the daughters. And at this moment, I'm concerned about how much we're bringing the women into this. So I have to speak equally to both. I have my own message for the daughters. And now I'm giving the sons' message to the daughters and the sons, okay? Something has got to be done when something is hurting our daughters and sons, whatever color is holding the gun. Put it down and bring life to our sons and our daughters. To our daughters and sons, I'm going to speak straight to the viewer. Some people think they're afraid of us. They fear an image that was made of us. Just a violent image overplayed of us. That thuggish image that's portrayed of us, that image is the new slave trade for us. Our gangster image keeps these prisons filled. These private prisons are the new cotton fields. But all of this is what we've been keeping real. When we took those record deals and rapped to kids, rob, deal, and kill. So this is something rap will heal. We have the power. Now is the hour. This is our Emancipation Proclamation. Circulate this around the nation. Now that I have to do this. My sister will not let me not. I'm gonna do it all the way. An image has been made of us. They say that they're afraid of us. A trick has now been played on us. A burden has been laid on us. But we don't have to carry it. Come and ride this chariot. I will be your Harriet. I will be your Harriet. I am the modern day Harriet Tubman. I'm here to free the whole world. But I'm starting with the video vixens and the thug men. It's time to take these images and rise above them. I am the modern day Harriet Tubman. I'm here to free our children from these identities imposed through the media for corporate entities. Those are the overseers we are not meant to see. But this is our Emancipation Proclamation. Circulate this around the nation. When this song reaches you, take a long vacation. Don't take a week, take a generation. You can take a century because now we are free to be whoever we are really meant to be. It's not up to me. I don't work for the North or the South. I'm not hired for the words that are coming from my mouth. I was sent by the universe just to bring us a verse, to help us lift this vicious curse. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, an image has been made of you. Do not believe it. And do not achieve it. Who you really are, the whole world needs it. I hope whoever hears this heeds it. That's it.
Ashe.
Ashe, thank you.
No, thank you. You should have did this before we started.
I told myself for the last 48 hours, I said, soon as he puts me on the mic, I'm going to be an image husband. And I'm like, hey.
That was great. That was great. I appreciate it. And the people, y'all better appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all know where to find us. Go document your people, whoever you are. If somebody tells you wrong, come tell me. Have a good day, y'all.
Wonderful. Have a great day.